Brasserie Lefebvre Barbãr Bok.
And remember, life is too short to be drinking shitty beer.
I bet you thought I was going to say Barbãr Black Sheep there, weren't you? Welcome to another edition of Bands, Bikes and Booze Reviews. Welcome to Belgium, and this is the Barbãr Bok that they're doing. Now, if that sounds familiar, it's gone under a couple of pseudonyms before this one. This was originally a Christmas beer. It was called Barbãr de Noël, and the other one was called Barbãr Winter Bok. Now it's just called Barbãr Bok, and it is a Belgian brown ale, according to their description. Barbãr, if you don't know, it roughly translates to barbarian, and if you look at the front on there, let me have a look, if I can get this in focus, that's supposed to be a depiction of a barbarian. Not sure from which period, but that's what it is. Now, this brewery, I have reviewed quite a few of their beers before, and they're not bad. But they do this Barbãr range. They've also got a blonde, which I think I've reviewed already on the channel, and I do recall it as being not bad at all. Now, this range of beers was introduced in 1996, so it's relatively new. Sadly, the information on this regarding what's gone in there is a little bit sparse. However, I have managed to glean that there is some honey in this. I don't know whether that's replacing invert sugar or what, but it's a specific type of Mexican honey from a place called Yucatan. If you are familiar with Ian Jury and the Blockheads, and they've got a song called Hit Me With Your Rim Stick, it mentions Yucatan in there. That is the only reason I have ever heard of that place previously. There you go. I'm full of useless information that will get you absolutely nowhere in life. Stick with me and you'll go places. The toilet and back, probably. Anyway, this Brasserie Lefebvre, I think that's how it's pronounced, were originally founded in 1876 and have been going ever since then. A bit of a potted history. They had quite a traumatic time during World War One. I think it was in 1916 the Germans commandeered the factory and basically stripped it of all the metal that they could find. That was a common practice among Belgian brewers during the war period. A lot of their kettles were stripped or commandeered and melted down for use in the German war effort. Unfortunately, some didn't survive, some never restarted after World War One. Thankfully, this one did. Also had a hard time during World War Two as well. As you know, the vast majority of Europe was occupied by the Germans during World War Two, Belgium being no exception, and they put a limit on the amount of beer they could brew, and they also limited the beer to 0.8% ABV. What was the point? I do not know, but I think it was to do with ingredients, malt of course being far more useful for making bread than brewing beer. That's debatable, but in wartime I will give you that one. Anyway, this lot are from the Walloon Brabant, which is the French speaking part of Belgium. They're from a municipality called Rebec, which is southeast of Brussels, and they do a fair amount of beer, or quite a wide range of beer. That is to say, they do a blonde. They also do a creek beer. Well, they say it's a creek beer, but it's cherry flavoured, so I'm imagining that's not a creek in the true sense of the word, or a lambic in the true sense of the word. It's just a flavoured fruit beer, which I must admit I am not a fan of at all. I just think they're very artificial flavoured. Novelty beers, in the most cases that I've tried, I don't think I've tried a good fruit beer from Belgium. But again, that's just my personal taste. I'm not really a fan of sweet things, and I'm not really a fan of, well, definitely not a fan of sweet beer, which is slightly alarming because they say there's honey in there. But honey in beer is not a bad thing. It's not unusual, in the words of Tom Jones. Of course, Fuller's Honeydew. I've got a review of that coming up soon, if it's not already out there. These go up in a completely random order. I've got a big backlog of videos as well, which were recorded as far back as 2021. So if you, some are even 2020 actually. So if you see some where I've got my own eyes, my own hair, and my own teeth, you know they're from a couple of years ago. But there you go. I'm waffling. Let's get on to the beer. Right, this is a 330ml bottle. It is 8.4% ABV. Oh, sorry, 8.5%. I'd lie. And this is a Belgian brown ale. Now, as I say, it's gone under the different names, so you could argue that this is a rebadged beer. But the Barbãr range that I've tried so far, i.e. one of them, the blonde, wasn't too bad. So I'm hoping this one isn't going to be too bad either. Does it mention any ingredients on the back? It has got a load of spiel on there. Everything is in the various European languages, all of which I cannot speak. Have they put English in there? Water. No, that's German. Water, barley malt, wheat, glucose, fructose syrup. Glucose, fructose syrup. Honey, 2%. Non-EU. Yeah, exactly. That's come from Mexico. Hops, bitter orange peel, coriander, and is that yeast? Yeast. Thank you for putting coriander on the ingredients. A lot of Belgian brewers don't do that. The fructose glucose syrup. That's a little bit of an alarm bell, but my prejudice could be unfounded. So let's get it open and let's see what's going on. Right, now, they say just to pour this, well, the pictures I've seen of it, it's just been put into a straight glass or a tankard, and that's what I've got here. I'll give you a quick look at a cap. It's quite an artistic looking cap, and it's got a depiction of that barbarian, hence the name Barbãr. Right, let's get it into ye olde glass. Now this beer has come out of the fridge, but this room is very warm because, fuck the Conservatives, I'm turning the heating on. I don't care how much it costs. If a man can't afford to heat the house where his family are, then the world has come to a fucking bitter crossroads, believe me. There it is in the glass. Everything is in there. On the nose. Wow. Interesting. Interesting. First thing that hits me is pear. Sweet pear. That's what I'm getting. I know I'm getting a bit more. Ethanol, slight. But yeah, I want to sound like a proper cockney now. Apples and pears. That's the aroma I'm getting from the beer. Sweet apple and pear. There's definitely some of the coriander coming through now as well. I'm getting that. And a little bit of peppery spice. Wonder where that's coming from. Either the yeast or the hops. I'm going to go with the yeast. It's really weird. There's sweetness and spicy aromas coming from there, and it's nice. But the head is dissipating quickly, as you would expect at 8.5%. So let's get it down my fat Gregory Peck. Bottoms up. Cool. And as I always say, on the first mouthful of a Belgian beer, just let the ethanol do its thing, get your palate adjusted, and then go back for a second dip. Ethanol was big on the first mouthful. There's a fairly high amount of spice on that too. Let's dive in again. for all the noises it makes about the honey and the fructose and glucose syrup, this isn't a sweet beer at all. It's more spicy than anything else, and it's like a white pepper spice, the type you'd get from a decent Belgian Vit. There's quite a lot of malt on this too, and with that malt comes fruit. However, it's been overshadowed by the big spice on this. Very complex aroma. Again, as I say, it's coriander. Slight trace of the orange peel, the bitter orange peel that they're talking about as well. I'm getting that now too. Let me dive in again. That is quite full-bodied. But one thing I will say, the carbonation is very aggressive, almost to the point where it's like sort of fine sandpaper on the back of the throat. I'm quite liking it though. It's not the worst beer in the world. However, the flavours are a little bit, how can I put this politely? If it's a Belgian brown ale they're going for, I've tasted brown ales that have got a hell of a lot more flavour, a lot more malt character on them, and a lot more dark dried fruit. You're not going to get that. I mean, it does look nice, but there's no real dark fruit on there. As I say, it's like quite a lot of spice, like white pepper, a little bit of black pepper as well. But the fruit that's on here, strangely, is like apple and pear, orchard fruit. Which is quite nice, but there's one thing that's putting me off this, and it's the carbonation. It's really aggressive. And for that aggressive carbonation, the head is pretty feeble. So I can sort of stomach aggressive carbonation if the head retention on here is good, but it isn't good at all. Whether it would have lasted longer in a tulip glass or a chalice maybe, who knows, but in this glass, and this is what all the pictures I've seen of it have been served in a glass like this, it's not lasting long. I can sort of half forgive it because of the high ethanol, 8.5%, but there's still the aggressive carbonation. Now don't get me wrong, I do like carbonation in a Belgian beer, but this is just a little bit over the top. Now this is bottle conditioned as well, so again I have to take that into consideration when I'm judging the carbonation, but it's just a little bit over the top. There is, and I'm getting that now, there is a slight sour note to this as well, which is not unpleasant. Don't get me wrong. I quite like Belgian sour beers, and that I would more or less wager is coming from the yeast. There's a nice bitter finish on it as well. Almost like a grassy, bitter finish. On the whole, that isn't a bad beer, I have to say. So, what is the verdict on Barbãr Bok? Well, Barbãr Bok, Barbãr de Noël, and Barbãr Winterbok. If you've tried any of them beers, then that's what this is. Now, the only thing that was putting me off this beer is the slight lack of fruit, it being a brown ale, and the aggressive carbonation on here. I really am not a fan of that excessive carbonation that they've got going on. On the plus side, there's some quite interesting flavours, especially for a brown ale. It's not your average brown ale. It's not full up with dark fruit or dried dark fruit, you know, the Christmas cake type flavours that you get from the malt and some of the sugar that goes into this. This is a little bit different. You can get some of the orange peel, and you can get, well, I don't know, they're saying there's fructose and glucose syrup in this. and honey. So I'm not sure whether that's honey I'm tasting or whether it's the glucose syrup. But either way, it isn't bad, I have to say. They do make a big thing about the honey in this, but it's not big, I don't think. So with that in mind, I'm going to give it a 6.5 out of 10. I'm going to take marks off for that carbonation. I'm going to take marks off for the slightly strange flavours. Now Percy's just come into the room. Let me tell you what Percy did today. Come here, Percy. Come on. Let me tell you what this little fucker did today. I'm not going anywhere near your gob. He got into the butter dish and he absolutely wiped it clean. It was almost a full load of butter. And about half an hour later, he threw it all up. Didn't you little fucker? Along with the dinner you'd just eaten as well. He's trying to ignore me now, aren't you? You know what you did. And not only that, I had little Dora under my desk trying to bite through an electric cable or a plug cable. Nice. Never a dull moment with these fucking clowns in the house, is there, Percy, eh? You reprobate. Yeah, so king of the butter mountains here, but he can't hold his butter. Never mind holding your beer, you can't hold your butter, can you, mate? I'm going to give it a 6.5 out of 10. I think that's a fair. Well, should I give it a 7? No, I'm going to stick with 6.5. It's not your average, in my opinion. What are you doing? Have you had too much butter, you little git? What are you doing? What are you doing, you idiot? I'm not going too near your mouth because I saw that look come out and it was not pretty. I'm putting you down here, mate, because you're fucking all over the shop. He's on a butter high, ain't you, mate? Because he needs more fat. He's not fat enough, is he? Yeah, I think 6.5 is a fair mark because it's not your typical Belgian brown ale. And don't get me wrong, there are some interesting flavours going on with that, but if you want a true Belgian brown ale, I wouldn't go for this. God, that carbonation is still there. And the ethanol's still there as well, which isn't a problem for me. But it's got more of a sour note to it as well. And obviously that's coming from the yeast. I like sour beers, so that's not a problem for me, but some people it might be off-putting. But I think 6.5, a solid 6.5 is a fair mark. I'll tell you how much this cost as well, if I can find it amongst all this other shit. Oh, there we go. I'm not that disorganised. Seriously, you wouldn't want to see this desk. It is just crawling with shit that I do not need. Right, what have we got? Barbãr Bok Brown, £3.45. And I'm just looking here, they've got the Iinga Winter Bock for £3.40. Well, you know, there's no competition there. It is better than the Golden Xmas Scotch Ale, which was £3.95. Give that a fucking swerve. And Tint Meadow is £2.75. So almost £1 cheaper for a superb quality beer. I think 6.5 is a fair mark considering the price. So there you go. And remember, beer is working class champagne.